When I bought 1,600 acres just outside the Willow Creek Estates HOA, I wasn't looking for trouble. I wanted privacy. The property had rolling hills, 2 small lakes, miles of forest, and enough space that I could go days without seeing another person. The previous owner had used it as a cattle ranch for decades. To me, it was a perfect escape. Apparently, the HOA saw it differently. Just 3 days after closing, a black SUV pulled into my driveway. Out stepped a sharply dressed woman carrying a clipboard. "Good afternoon," she said with a practiced smile. "I'm Linda Parker, president of Willow Creek Estates HOA. I introduced myself. She immediately handed me a thick packet of papers. "These are our community rules and architectural guidelines. You will need to submit your future plans for board approval." I glanced at the paperwork. Then I looked back at her. "I think there's been a misunderstanding. My property isn't inside your HOA." Her smile disappeared. "It borders our community." "That's true," I replied, "but it isn't part of it." She folded her arms. "Every neighboring property follows our standards." I smiled politely. "Mine doesn't." She left looking annoyed. I assumed that was the end of it. I was wrong. A week later, I received a certified letter demanding I remove my equipment barn because it didn't match neighborhood aesthetics. The funny part? The barn had been standing there since 1988. The HOA also demanded I repaint my ranch entrance, replace my fencing, and seek approval before repairing an old gravel road that had existed for nearly 40 years. I ignored the letter. 2 weeks later came another one. This time, they claimed I owed nearly $22,000 in unpaid HOA assessments. That made me laugh. You can't owe dues to an association you've never joined. Instead of arguing, I hired a real estate attorney. He reviewed every deed, county record, subdivision map, and easement filed over the last 50 years. His conclusion was simple. The HOA has absolutely no authority over your land. Then everything became much more interesting. Instead of backing down, the HOA filed a lawsuit. They claimed my ranch somehow benefited from their neighborhood, and therefore should contribute financially. According to them, my property used roads, utilities, and community services maintained by the HOA. None of it was true. My ranch had its own private entrance directly from the county highway, its own water wells, its own electrical service, even its own maintenance roads. The lawsuit made no sense. During discovery, my attorney requested every document the HOA intended to rely on. Thousands of pages arrived. Board meeting minutes, financial records, old surveys, historic subdivision maps. Buried inside those files was one document that changed everything. It was an original subdivision plat filed decades earlier. Across the bottom was a clearly labeled note. All land beyond this boundary are permanently excluded from HOA jurisdiction. My ranch sat entirely beyond that line. Even better, the HOA's own attorney had highlighted that exact sentence years earlier in a previous legal review. The board already knew they had no authority over my property. They sued anyway. When my attorney presented that document during a preliminary hearing, the judge looked directly at the HOA president. "Did your board review this plat before filing suit?" Silence filled the courtroom. Finally, she answered quietly, "Yes." The judge raised an eyebrow. "So you knowingly filed claims contradicting your own governing documents?" No one answered. Things only became worse. The court ordered the HOA to produce internal emails discussing the lawsuit. Those emails revealed several board members believed forcing me into court would pressure me into signing a voluntary annexation agreement. One email even read, "He'll probably settle before spending money on lawyers." They underestimated me. After reviewing the evidence, the judge dismissed every claim. Then came the ruling nobody expected. Because a lawsuit had been filed despite overwhelming evidence showing the HOA lacked jurisdiction, the court ordered the association to reimburse my legal expenses. The amount exceeded $300,000. Homeowners weren't happy. When residents discovered their dues were paying for a lawsuit the board knew they couldn't win, outrage spread throughout the neighborhood. Emergency meetings were held. Several board members resigned within weeks. The HOA president stepped down shortly afterward. As for me, I never sought revenge. I simply returned to improving my ranch. I restored hiking trails, repaired old fencing, expanded the cattle operation, and planted hundreds of native trees across the property. Months later, one of my new neighbors stopped by. "I owe you an apology," he admitted. "We believed everything the board told us." I smiled. No hard feelings. He looked across the ranch. "I guess they picked the wrong landowner." I laughed. "I guess they did." Today, the same county records that protected my property remain on file for anyone to see. The boundary hasn't changed. The law hasn't changed. Only the people running the HOA change. Because sometimes the biggest mistake isn't building a fence or sending a violation notice. Sometimes it's filing a lawsuit without first reading your own documents.